could begin.
Sorry. Good morning, Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Bass, distinguished members of the House Subcommittee on Africa. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. It is indeed a great honor and privilege to have the opportunity to appear before you to discuss issues related to the future of democracy and human rights in Ethiopia. Democracy and human rights have direct implications for Ethiopia's survival as a nation. The existence of a democratically elected and accountable government that strictly adheres to the rule of law and respects the basic rights of its citizens is the only arrangement that will ensure Ethiopia's stability and prosperity in the long run. A stable and prosperous Ethiopia contributes to the prosperity and stability of the region. An unstable Ethiopia has the potential to destabilize the Horn of Africa. Issues ranging from religious extremism, potential conflict over freshwater usage, crippling poverty, and looming environmental challenges could threaten the livelihood of the people in the region, and such challenges require the attention and resources of the international community in partnership with responsible and accountable leaders in the region. It is therefore in the economic and national security interest of the US and its Western allies to ensure that Ethiopia achieves durable stability, which can only come from genuine democratization, rather than settle for a short-term, tenuous peace that is falsely projected by dictatorships and that could collapse with the slightest challenge from a fed-up and angry populace. Having said that as an introduction, let me quickly and directly address the topic at hand. There are three interrelated issues. The first deals with the government's observance of human rights and democratic principles after the days of Mallas. This is a topic that is least controversial, and I have addressed it in detail in the written testimony that I have submitted for the record. Suffice it to say that in every major category of human rights and democratization, things are as bad as they were during Mallas' tenure, or even worse in some cases. Award-winning journalists are languishing in jail. Ethiopia is very close to Iran, Cuba, and Somalia in the number of journalists jailed or exiled. As a cruel reminder of the elections in communist Soviet Union, the ruling party allegedly won 99.6% of the parliamentary seats under Mallas in 2010. As if to outdo Mallas, in the most recent local elections, the ruling party and its allies won all of the 3.8 million seats. The Independent Election Commission called it a manifestation of the maturity of Ethiopian democracy. The government is simply allergic to the presence of independent civil organizations. It decides on who should be the leaders of religious institutions and has the audacity even to attempt to pressure Ethiopian Muslims to abandon their faith and convert to a new sect that it somehow favors. It purposely fosters conflict among different cultural and religious communities. Ethnic cleansing of the Amhara from the south and Benishangul regions, which started under Mallas, hasn't stopped. The forced eviction of indigenous people from the Omo Valley and Gambella regions has intensified. The judiciary, like all state institutions, is completely captured to a point where the faith that people might have in finding justice through formal state institutions has been obliterated. Mr. Chairman, the potential for reforms under the current government, which forms the second part of this discussion, is at once very critical as well as potentially controversial, because the discussion about the future by its very nature is speculative. In my mind, this issue has two parts. The first is my own assessment of the possibility of reform under the current regime. The second is a follow-up to the first. If there is no reforms, what is going to happen to Ethiopia in the future? Let me address both of these issues candidly. Much as I wish it, I don't see the possibility of an internally driven reform leading to a genuine democratic dispensation in Ethiopia. The ruling clique have committed too many human rights crimes, have accumulated too much wealth through rampant corruption, and have antagonized the population too much to feel that they can continue to enjoy a peaceful life after relinquishing power, which they know would happen if there was to be a truly free and fair election. Instead, they believe that they can somehow survive through total repression insofar as they can get the foreign aid resources as well as the diplomatic support they need to help them keep the lead on any potential resistance to their power. The only change that Mallas's days has brought to this situation is that it has revealed the tenuous nature of this calculation, as it has exposed the internal conflict and bickering within the ruling coalition. This takes me to the second part of the issue. So what is going to happen if there is no possibility of reform coming from the government? Will Ethiopians simply accept tyranny and live this humiliating existence indefinitely? If I know anything about the Ethiopian character, That is one bet I am not willing to take. That is why, unfortunately, my assessment is rather pessimistic. I think the government's capacity for total repression is going to be challenged rather dramatically in the near future. As the government simply refuses to reform, intensifies its repression, deliberately decimates the legal opposition, and continues to antagonize people in all parts of the country, armed resistance has become an acceptable form of struggle. The various armed groups have started to talk seriously about unifying their actions and their vision for a democratic future as the public's attention shifts from the peaceful opposition to the armed groups as their last best hope for ending their humiliation and freeing themselves from tyranny. Mr. Chairman, it is painful to see my country go through such turmoil in order to achieve the most basic rights that all people in this day and age routinely expect and deserve. I wish there could be a peaceful way out of this quagmire, but I feel that is unlikely. This has serious implications for US foreign policy. The current policy of shoring up and bankrolling authoritarian rule with the hope that it could achieve a modicum of stability in the region is going to face a serious challenge. Will the US and its allies continue to support a brutal regime that is sure to be unstable as the armed resistance against it intensifies? Will such support ensure the stability of the regime over the long run? If the opposition is committed to a pluralist, democratically elected government in Ethiopia, wouldn't it be better and more durable ally than the current regime? This takes me to my last point regarding what the US can do to ensure reforms. If reform leading to genuine democratization is sought, clearly the policy followed by the US and its allies in the past 21 years has not worked. The policy of constructive engagement, which hopes to cajole the government to implement some reforms in exchange for financial and diplomatic support, has simply failed to achieve its objective. Instead, the current policy might unwittingly increase instability in Ethiopia. On the other hand, there is a very strong argument, both on national security and humanitarian grounds, to keep the situation from deteriorating even further. Contrary to prevailing wisdom in the West, the Ethiopian government is amenable to pressure, especially financial pressure. A coordinated, no-nonsense financial pressure that conditions Western aid on clear, targeted, measurable, time-bound political reforms that could lead to a democratic dispensation is, in my view, the only mechanism that could avert the potential crisis that is looming in Ethiopia. Mr. Chairman, working towards such an outcome is not only the right thing to do, but also the smart thing to do. The world community has enough experience by now to know that doing nothing at the early stages of a crisis would lead to extremely costly later. A crisis is looming in Ethiopia, and if we act wisely now, we can avoid a lot of pain and suffering later. I hope the United States will play its part to bring about a peaceful and sustainable solution. Such an outcome is good for the international community, good for regional stability, and certainly good for Ethiopia. I know, Mr. Chairman, under your leadership, your committee in this House will do its part for the well-being of the Ethiopian people. Thank you very much.
Dr. Nega, thank you very much for your testimony. The committee will be in order. Thank you.